Hi guys, I'm Jamie from the Abode Academy and welcome to our YouTube channel. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe for any future videos. So in today's video we're going to talk about tips and accessory storage. As you can see here, I have a Festool box. This was mainly for Hoover attachments, I think it was originally for, but I took them out and put them into a separate bag, and I've actually put all my tips and accessories for my airless sprayer inside this. It means that I've got it all together, and if I'm ever like on a job, I know where everything is, and when I pick this up to go onto site, it's all together in one place. So what I'll do is open it up, and as you can see in here, I have my spanners, I have a pair of grips, I have a toothbrush, I have another spanner that comes with the sprayer, I have my guards for my tips to go into, I have a couple of different guards, I have Graco ones and I have a TriTech guards, I have all my extension bars. These are the quick links, so what happens is when you're extending your bar you can just click them together like so, and then giving yourself that extra extension on the gun. Also inside this box I have all my tips, and what I'm actually doing is keeping them in an anti-freeze, which I'll explain in a minute. Okay, so what we're going to talk about first is what I keep inside this box and why I keep that inside the box. So spanner. So most things on sprayers will say hand tight, and there's be things that are not hand tight, like the hose going onto the sprayer will not be hand tight, so you'll need a spanner for those sort of things. Or if you've got an extension bar which is not one of these quick connects, which is a screw-on one, again that says hand tight, but trust me, it is spanner tight. If you don't tighten it with a spanner, then you'll get leakage coming out of that gun between your hand and the gun. So I would say definitely tighten that up with a spanner. Secondly, what I carry in the box here is the quick connects, and these are great because at the end of the day, if you're spraying something and all of a sudden you can't get the gun high enough, then you can just put the extension bar on to suit whatever height you're spraying at. So again, if you're spraying sort of walls and ceilings and you don't want to bend all the way down, then you could add your extension bars to suit. Say that you were spraying a high ceiling, you could add your extension bar on to suit that ceiling that you're actually spraying. And these quick connects, they are brilliant because they're so easy to put together. So if you were sort of spraying walls with this one, say, but then your ceiling was a lot higher, then you could just add that piece on. Obviously you can buy different extension bars to suit whatever job you're doing really. The grips, I use these a lot, these are extendable grips. I use these to hold things together as I'm tightening them to save your hands, or sometimes you'll have something where the spanner won't quite fit over, so again you can extend that right over to grab onto it. It's just always handy having that in your box. I'm not saying you'll use it for every single job, but just having it there is a must. So tip guard, so this is obviously what the tip actually sits into. So again, this would depend on what tip you're using. So this is the TriTech guard, and this is actually a Graco guard. And with the Graco guards, what I'll actually do is quickly explain about the different hole sizes in the Graco guards. There's two different hole sizes. So with the tip, you'll get a thing called a housing. That's something that actually sits in the back of this guard. So one has actually got a smaller hole and one has got a bigger hole. So if you can see that on the camera, but again, that's not the actual guard, it's the housing that sits in the guard. But obviously you don't want to be changing that every 5 minutes. So having two guards with each one, so that's going to represent, with the smaller hole, a low pressure tip, and then with the bigger hole, the high pressure tip. So green tips, blue tips for Graco. With TriTech, this is what I like about the TriTech guards and the tips, is that guard and housing fits both tips, so low pressure and high pressure. So for me, it's a lot easier. So if you're changing between the two, so you're doing your emulsion in with a high pressure tip, and then when you move on to your woodwork, you can only get low pressure tips for woodwork, then you're going to use that guard, and that guard is going to do both tips, so it's a lot easier to remember. There's a lot of people that always say that I was spraying with a Graco tip and it's coming out like cottage cheese. It's because they're probably spraying with the wrong housing in the guard. Okay, so next we're going to move on to why I've got a toothbrush in there. So the toothbrush is great for when you're cleaning everything out and you're getting into all your tips and you can clean everything down and all off of the threads. I'd say this is the most important thing to remember, is that when you're using this sprayer, like the internals of the machine and the actual inside of these threads is what really needs to be looked after, because you could be using this tomorrow, say, not clean your threads out properly, all that paint dries on there and you can't screw it onto the gun properly. And if you can't fully seal that guard or that extension bar onto that thread, then you're going to get leaks. That needs to be properly tightened up, and if that's jammed with paint, then you're not going to be able to do so. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the boxes I use. So these are just little sandwich boxes, and they're actually filled with antifreeze, and inside that antifreeze is all of my tips. So I have all the Woodward tips saying on my emulsion tips in different pots, or different brands, different tips, either or really, however you want to do it. But the reason I keep this in antifreeze is because when you clean this tip out with your toothbrush and you're giving it a good old clean, and you look at that tip and you think that's clean, and then you put that back in your box, 9 times out of 10 there's something in there that you've not quite got out, like a piece of dry paint. And if you leave that in the box, that's going to just dry out overnight, and then the next day you're going to use it and that'll be straight in the bin, because you're never going to get that paint out. That hole is so tiny in there, like and the amount of time you'd waste trying to clean it could be getting on with another job. So I'd say if that does happen and you do wreck your tip, it's, in terms of how much that's going to cost you in time to fix, I would say just chuck it and put a new tip in. But if you keep them in antifreeze, then that's keeping that tip wet all the time. So that wet film is going to stay on the tip constantly. So what it's going to mean is when you pick that tip out of that box, nothing can dry in it. So if you did have a bit of paint stuck in there, then it's never going to dry out because it's submerged in liquid, which in my case is antifreeze. You can use, there's a few things you can use. There's special tip cleaners and, you know, keep safe stuff. But for me, it's a waste of money. This is RV antifreeze. It's £7 off Amazon. I've never had an issue with it. I've been using this for over nearly 10 years. I've never had this problem. So just chuck them in some liquid. My preferred thing is antifreeze. I think it doesn't let the tip corrode. And it's worked for me for years, so it'll work for you.